Okay, welcome everybody. It's nice to see you tonight for this CPS 2024 annual meeting and celebration of our three wonderful champions of public education and our victory on question 2. So Dan French was going to be starting us off, but he lost his power, so he's not going to be starting us off. Just letting some more people in and putting the program in the chat for the newcomers. Okay. Here comes another one of our honorees. Welcome, Shelley.
Hi. Hello.
Okay.
I'm going to be eating my dinner a little bit while I'm doing this because I just got in.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Please know.
Okay. So, again, welcome. It's so nice to have you all here tonight, and I'm really excited to introduce and hear from our honorees. I'll just start out with some norms. The link to the program is in the chat. And we ask that everyone step up and step back, be respectful. People still coming. One person speak at a time. In other words, one mic. Agree to disagree, be aware of time, and permission to speak in first draft. Allow for oops and ouchies. Mistakes are part of success. Oh, here comes Jessica. Okay. So, yeah, please keep yourself on mute when you're speaking. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Matt Ruggiero, who's going to introduce our first honoree.
Thanks, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Ruggiero. I'm a teacher in Boston Public Schools and a member of the Boston Teachers Union. And it is an honor tonight to get to introduce our first champion of public education honoree. Beth Kontos made a career change from a computer programmer to a social studies teacher in 2004. Her life was forever changed as she taught, mentored, and challenged her students over the next 20 years. In addition to that, Beth also took on various labor roles, becoming the president of the Salem Teachers Union, vice president of the North Shore Labor Council, a vice president of the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, and the president of AFT Massachusetts from 2018 to 2024. I voted for her. She has been a leader in so many recent education justice campaigns, from the 2016 Charter Cap ballot campaign to the Student Opportunity Act, Fair Share Amendment, and most recently, Yes on 2. And I just want to share one quick little moment that I think of when I think about Beth, and it goes back to 2018. There was a gas workers lockout. National Grid had locked out the local gas workers during a contract dispute. So there was a big rally. We marched from the Boston City Hall to the State House. There were a lot of speakers. One of the new kids on the block showed up. But I think my favorite speech, the one that I remember the most, was Beth, our newly elected AFT president at the time. And I remember she got up there and she spoke about the connection between our communities and public institutions like education, how important it was for teachers to show up for our students, our families, and their communities, that, the strong connection between, having access to a good public education and students and families having access to good paying jobs, healthcare, and all the things they need to do well, and that those things go together. And I remember when she said, the teachers are here, we have your back, and there was a huge kind of roar in the crowd, and there were these two two construction workers in the crowd in front of me, and one of them turned to the other and he goes, "Man, the teachers are here." And I think of that moment because it reminds me of really Beth's approach, her care, her warmth, and her belief in how she shows up as a partner and ally to students, to workers, and to communities. And now in retirement, Beth continues supporting fully funded public institutions like schools and libraries, as well as equitable solutions to climate change. And her newest role that she's in is also a labor of love, caring for her granddaughter, baby Kay. Welcome and congratulations, Beth. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Matt. That day was, it was one of those days I had no idea I was going to speak. I had no idea I was even going to go there that day. And it was so exciting. And I was personally offended that people were locked out of their jobs. And I remember thinking exactly what, that our kids need families that have family sustaining jobs, and that the outcomes for our kids really matter when the parents have decent working conditions and have health care benefits, and a good pay so they can maintain their homes and make sure the kids have everything they need, right? So we know that that always goes together. I love that story because the last thing I did too is I shouted out my phone number for some reason, that if the presidents needed to get me, and afterwards someone said, "Holy shit, you just gave out your cell phone to the whole world." But I'm sorry, I swore right there. But you know, I don't have to talk about the things that happened in the last 20 years because all of you were with me. And what I take away from this work is the feeling that all of us were truly in it together. I mean, when I think of the early days of the fair test meetings that we used to have, and Deb, I remember Deb being at the Quincy office when we all met there. It was Monty, Alan, Dan, and then, 30 people that were in the classroom that I did not know, most of them. And I remember meeting in multiple Saturdays to figure out, how do we organize? How do we talk about testing in a way that this MCAS is hurting our kids? How do we talk about expanding charter schools is the wrong way to go? I started going through pictures in that I have on my phone, and I found us, in large numbers standing out for no on two and that one, right, in 2016. The only good thing that happened in 2016 was that we held back the cap on charter schools. Statewide effort, and it was absolutely amazing and wonderful. And I think it gave all of us the spark to keep going, even under very difficult times, right? And then, fund our future. Think forward to that day. Was it May 7th was the day on the Common at the State House, when busloads of educators and students and families descended, and there were helicopters going over us at the Common, and my mother texting me, my brother texting me that hey, something big is happening where you are. Is that you? Are you guys? And then me and Mary and Jessica up on stage, leading everyone in a chant. Holy smokes, who doesn't love that, right? That was an amazing. At that point, we really knew that this was going to happen. I think the whole state was with us, and except for a few curmudgeons, right? I mean, part of my Student Opportunity Act was just absolutely wonderful, and we're not done. You know, we have to fix it, and we have to fix the inflation part of that, right, so that we're doing the right thing going forward. And the other thing is going through some of my photos. I took pictures of a lot of documents over the last 20 years, and I found in 2013, Salem Public Schools paid almost $500,000 for ANET. Do you guys remember that? Achievement Network. And in 1 year, we spent $500,000. That would have been a lot of professionals, a lot of educator salaries to learn how to give the MCAS better, to analyze the data, and truly how to teach to the test. Well, we've come a long way from that. We are not, when we have to make sure that our Student Opportunity Act money is spent appropriately. We need to look at budgets. That's when I really started getting empowered about tearing apart budgets and seeing, what do you mean we have to lay someone off when we're spending $500,000 on a testing program, right? So Measure's a big part of my career, CPS. These are so much overlap in the groups, right? And I think one of the things that I found very powerful from my friends, you guys, all of you who showed up at panels, who testified, who came to each other's school committee meetings. I have some pictures. I have some great pictures. Wait, I want to show you one. Hold on. I'm just going to turn off my video. Do you see that? Who do you see over here? My friend Lisa. There's me, and there's my friend Sheila, who's now the president of the Lynn Teachers Union. And back here, I think that's Brant. I'm not sure. He was president of Lynn at that time.
Yep.
But when I look how young we are, neither one of us gray.
That was when I was coloring my hair.
Yeah, well, probably me too. But it's when I come away from the last 20 years, it's all about the relationships and the feeling that I have for my students, for their families, and for all of my compatriots, right? All the people who stood beside me and who led the way before me, and hopefully will keep going when I'm no longer here. But I'm not going anywhere, right? Yeah, it's just that I'm not, you know what I mean. I'm not really going anywhere. But thank you for honoring me. I am pleased to be here, and I will continue to be with you in this fight. And thank you, Lisa, and everyone. And Matt, that was really sweet what you said. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, for letting us honor you. And it's such a privilege to have worked beside you all these years and get to know you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to winning battles with you going forward. We
right.
said we were going to have an opportunity if people had questions, a few minutes of Q&A. So if somebody has a question, you can put it in the chat or raise your hand. It's not necessary. It's optional. Questions are optional. Does anyone have a question or comment they want to share before we move on in the agenda?
Send me private messages.
Okay. All right. In that case, it's my turn next. So congratulations, Beth, and on to our next honoree. So spotlighting myself. Okay. So it is my great honor now to introduce our second champion of public education, Shelley Scruggs. I first met Shelley at a meeting of the first 10 signers of the ballot initiative that came to be known as Question 2. And I felt an immediate bond with Shelley, who was motivated to take on this issue because of concerns about her son, Sean, since I also first got involved in this issue as a concerned parent. Shelley's son is a vocational education student with ADHD, who she felt was at risk of being denied a high school diploma and kept from pursuing his goal of becoming a plumber based on MCAS results. Shelley took the initiative to find a group of like-minded Lexington parents and file her own ballot initiative to end the MCAS graduation requirement, and then fortunately decided to work with the MTA and the Question 2 Coalition, first gathering signatures to get the question on the ballot and then campaigning for its passage. Shelley is a Princeton graduate and an MIT employee, and she said she believes the MCAS does not account for the type of student her son has become. In one of her many published quotes about why she was working so hard to get question 2 passed, Shelley said of Sean, "He works hard and he can do all this hard work, can get really good grades in class, go to school every day and be set up to do a great job at what he wants to do and still not get a diploma. I just thought that's criminal." Couldn't agree more. All along, Shelley has been a passionate, eloquent, tireless advocate for this issue and for a better system of determining whether Massachusetts public school students are ready to graduate and pursue their own post-secondary goals, whatever they may be. So it is with great pleasure and pride that I introduce Shelley Scruggs, the second of our three 2024 CPS champions of public education. And now to find Shelley's little box so I can.
Right here. Yeah, I think I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, but I'm
Okay,
trying to
cool.
find your face in the box.
I'm right next to you on my screen.
Hold on. Oh, here you are.
Okay. Yeah, well, I apologize. I was muted. You can see the histrionics, the target of all this hard work. It just went out. He had to go hang out with his friends on a very foggy night. So I'm just, yeah. So I'm looking at some of the faces and I'm kind of jealous. I think of quite a few people whose kids are already grown up. Mine is 16 and a half. And so I keep thinking of the joke that Roseanne made years and years ago about now I understand why some animals eat their young. Um, but I'm still working hard for him. Yeah, so thank you. I'm working with Lisa and Deb and the MTA, and I learned and a lot of the great teachers and stuff. I really learned a lot. It was really quite an education, this whole process. So as I said, my son has ADHD. He's always been on an IEP. And so we moved to Lexington when he was in preschool. This was in 2012. And then, all of a sudden here we are in high school. And I just started thinking, this could be a real obstacle to him. And so I did some online studying about how you get a ballot initiative, and I got a bunch of people, a number of parents at Minuteman. I got some folks here in Lexington and some like-minded people in my church, and we got our 10 signatures. And so I turned it in. I was the 2301. We were the very first people to submit a ballot, and I was coming out, and I got an actual call out of the blue from a guy I went to college with years ago because he's a lawyer and he had worked on other ballot initiatives, and he gave me the rundown about, so you've got your 10 signatures, but you need organization, you need money. It's really hard to get the 70,000. I thought, oh my goodness. And so that sort of came out of the blue. And then a few days later, out of the blue, I got a call from Noah Berger of the MTA saying, we saw that you submitted this. We'd like to work with you. And I thought, oh, this is great. And so that's kind of when I just kind of jumped on, kind of was the face of this whole process. I got to meet Deb and Max and Noah at their first, I think it was September 2023. We had this whole kind of a nice get together. They passed out the signature sheets, and then I guess about a week later, they found, oh, the sheets aren't wrong. They're misprinted. And I thought, oh my God, what kind of process is this? How many signatures have you got? So they got kind of all these snafus, and so we got the signatures again and started standing out in front of Stop and Shop and going to town days and meeting lots of people, and it's really been good. I'm not surprised that I think ballot 2 passed by about 19, 20 points. And I think that kind of matches up with what I think a lot of people were seeing in terms of meeting people and talking to people. A lot of teachers, a lot of parents, a lot of, I think one of the places that we collected signatures from was at the Burlington Mall, which is not the best place. People are there shopping. And we're standing out there with our signature sheets, and no people, they're shopping, they want to have fun. They see with the clipboard. No one wanted to, they just kind of, no one ignored me until I mentioned the word MCAS, and they got a 180-degree turnaround. And they were just, met a number of young parents who were like one of the first classes to take the MCAS, and now their kids are in school and that sort of thing. So this is all, the whole process, because education in Massachusetts, we have such a great reputation. People are always trying to get on the right side of things, and just all the different sides, and the business side. First the governor was for it, and then she was against it because of the business community pushing it. So we're still trying to figure out what class is actually going to stop having MCAS as a requirement. And I understand there may be some shenanigans going on at the State House. Who knows? They might try to water things down. But I think with a 20-point margin, I think that would be very unwise and very unpopular. So, but I really appreciate working. I got to sit down. I think I saw Alan in there someplace. Yeah, there you are. It's really interesting. I'm a Democrat. I think a lot of us are Democrats. And Alan, myself, and Ed Doobie, who's one of kind of the head honcho in the Lexington area in terms of getting us signs. And so we went to the Hudson Republican Town Committee to sit down to talk with them about that. And, it's a bunch of people around the table. A lot of them were older Republicans, and we gave our spiel. And there's also another person who was on a no side, and we took. It was interesting conversation. It was very polite considering the divisive times, but people were very polite. They were older. They were concerned about making sure that the students that they hired had the qualifications. And what was interesting is they took a little straw poll at the beginning of the meeting, and I think there were 3 or 4 people who were for it, and about 11 or so who were against. And at the end of the meeting, we had changed a couple of minds. They cut 2 minds, and one wasn't sure. And I thought that was amazing, that because they were asking really good questions. You're concerned about quality of education and so forth. So this has really been an education. I really appreciate this honor. I got lucky. The timing was good, because I had been worried about this really seriously. And then all these people started calling me up. It's like, oh, this is great. So now we have funding, we have organization, but it was a lot of work and a lot of dedicated people. And I hope it all turns out well. I know that they're trying to figure out they're always concerned about lower income versus higher income and so on and so forth. But that's just one thing. There's no reason to cut these lower income kids off at the knees if they can't have a diploma. They've gone through school. I think a lot of the knowledge that you actually get working in the working world. And if you don't have a diploma after going to school and doing everything else, that's just really rough. So I really appreciate meeting so many people, hearing a lot of different ideas, and a lot of people were very strongly against, again, with good ideas. Some were strongly for, some people weren't sure. But it was definitely an education in the political process in Massachusetts. So this was the only fight I had. My son went to Minuteman. We had a kind of an unfortunate choice of superintendent a few years ago. She fired the principal out of the blue. So I got started in this whole political thing, trying to, we had to change out our school committee people and, to try to get rid of this one. We did actually get rid of him. So I've been a real education in the political process here in Massachusetts. But I appreciate this honor, and I hope to keep me in the loop, but see what other kind of interesting things are doing. Just listening to the first lady speaking, and all the history of charter schools. I mean, and all the kind of this initiative and that initiative. There's so many different sides, and it's interesting to me. And I just hope what the young man that just walked out of here after I told him he couldn't go, we won't even go there. Um, I was an older parent, so I'm looking forward to when he's a parent too. Not too soon, but I would just love to see my grandchild just kind of stick it to his father, and get a little payback. I think people can appreciate that. But thank you very much for the honor. It's so interesting talking to people, and the fact that as in a profession where you're really dealing with everybody and everybody's kids, I think you really get empathy and an understanding of little people, who are going to grow up to be big people, and how important it is that we give them what they need, and not try some strange theory or something that's politically expedient or it looks nice on paper but doesn't really work. And I think that's the important thing. The MCAS has not been doing what it needs to do. It's made a lot of money for somebody. Some people, a lot of Brookline and Newton can talk about their high NCAS. They can still do that now, but I just think I like to see what happens next. I hope it all turns out well and that we really come together and find good ways for educational equity. That's the most important, not just, within a school, like a child like my son who isn't as academic as other kids in this area, but also across the Commonwealth. So thank you very much for this honor. I've been really enjoyed. It's been an honor working with people, and it's nice to be in a fight where there are lots of people on your side, and the other side is generally pretty nice. But that's difficult in politics. I think we all know that. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Shelley, and all kinds of people are congratulating you and
Okay.
appreciating you in the chat.
Thank you.
And I certainly appreciate you. You have been such a good spokesperson for this issue, and we will keep you in the loop because we don't want to lose you as a wonderful public education advocate. And best of luck to you and Sean, especially hope he comes home fine tonight.
Sometimes I wish he would just stay out there and then come back, please. Just sometimes, but no, yeah. It's hard to let go because he's going to be getting his driver's license in a couple of weeks.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. And he's I think he'll be a safe driver. He's generally safe kid, but it's just, you see how look at their age. It's like, did my parents really let me drive when I was that young by
crazy.
myself? Yeah.
Okay, well, congratulations. And now I'm going to turn the mic over to Julie. See if I can do this. Play spotlight. There's Julie, who's going to introduce our third honoree.
Well, I wanted to say first, is Max, are you still available there? I noticed that Max Page was on the call.
I'm here, but my plane is about to leave, so
it is.
I gave some words to Lisa to read. Congratulations to all.
Okay, I do want to read. I'm going to read those first before I introduce. I get to introduce Deb McCarthy, but I'm going to read Max's comments first. He says, I'm sorry I can't be there, but he was for a while, and I'm flying down to DC to do a final push for a passage of a bill that is of great importance for our educators, the Social Security Fairness Act, which would eliminate the steal of well-earned Social Security benefits from our underpaid educators, especially education support professionals, that has been going on for close to 2 generations. And we're so close to ending this injustice. I think that's amazing. It has been a really, really long time. But I did want to chime in to offer my congratulations to my partner in this work, Deb McCarthy. Deb would be the first to say, and may say that tonight, that our victories are collective, especially in a union. But it's not lost on anyone here that Deb has been denouncing the harm done by a high-stakes MCAS for more than a decade and has campaigned furiously within our union to make it a top priority, including becoming vice president to pursue that goal. This past year, we took on the challenge and mustered the full power of the MTA and our broad coalition of unions and education justice advocates to win an overwhelming victory against lots of billionaires. Looking at you, Michael Bloomberg. Right-wing groups, and too many politicians, including in corner offices in the State House. She traveled the state making the case to any who would listen, and the public listened to a message they believed in. Let's focus on authentic learning and not on a one-time high-stakes test that has not improved equity and has detracted from our classrooms. The benefits were obvious on the day after the victory, when students were informed that their retests were not high stakes. But the benefits will also unfurl over many years as we reclaim our schools and classrooms and tests are put in their place as but one way of gauging our students and what our schools are doing. That's the lasting impact of Deb's passion for undoing high stakes testing. Congratulations for this recognition, Deb. and onward to the next battles for education justice. Max Page. Thanks, Max. That's great. And I would like to introduce Deb as well. And I am so honored to be able to introduce my friend, Deb McCarthy, as a champion for public education. As anyone who knows Deb knows, she is a force of nature. Deb is the vice president of the MTA and was a teacher in the Hall Public Schools for over 25 years. I was so lucky to meet Deb over 10 years ago when I was an MTA lobbyist. MTA had just elected a new president, Barbara Mataloni, who was determined to shake things up. And she made a great pick for chair of MTA's Government Relations Committee, which decides what bills to file in the legislature. Barbara chose Deb to make sure MTA was filing bills that made a difference to our students and schools. And Deb came through, prioritizing fighting charter school expansion, increasing funding to poorer schools, increasing taxes on the wealthy to pay for it, and fighting the MCAS graduation requirement. Deb is the real thing, a true fighter for our students and our schools. She's driven by her concern for helping kids and educating the whole child. And this made her realize she couldn't tolerate the unfair testing system any longer. As a fifth grade teacher, she gave the MCAS tests and knew the anxiety it caused children, how schools were punished for low scores and hundreds of marginalized students were denied diplomas each year. She became a conscientious objector, refusing to administer the MCAS tests in Hall. The Globe quoted her. This is an issue that educators have been passionate about for quite some time. We know this harm needs to be eliminated, and it's time to transition to assessment that's effective, performance-based, and allows students to thrive. Deb fought the MCAS for a decade, and since becoming MTA VP in 2022, she became one of the top leaders of changing the law. From the signature collection to get on the ballot, to lobbying the legislature, to the amazing campaign that passed Question 2, when Deb crisscrossed the state speaking at numerous forums and rallies and union meetings. Deb, thank you for your tireless and devoted work. We are in awe of your commitment and your ability to keep smiling. We love you. Keep going.
There's nothing for me to say except thank you. Wow. Max, thank you. Julie, wow. And so this is a collective effort, and I really do appreciate the kind words, but I just want to acknowledge the folks along the way that stood beside me in this fight. And Julie, I'll never forget the first time I met you up at UMass behind that little pillar with our little. So anyways, it's really strange. I'm somebody who says that I feel like the book was written long before I was born. And I actually came from the State House today, myself and Max and Noah having a conversation with Jason Lewis over, he was talking about his bill, and we were talking about the bill that the MTA is going to file, because we were the ones in coalition with folks who won this. And so we would be in coalition leading on a bill. And I just, because this journey for me started probably 13 years ago when one day the last school got out and there was a hearing in Boston. I got on a boat. I showed up. It was about the MCAS. I signed a piece of paper. I sat down. Next thing I knew, there was over 200 people in the room. I was like, wow, I can't wait to hear about this, because I just knew as a little girl in a small town in Hull that the MCAS was causing an awful lot of harm to my students. And lo and behold, the next thing I know, a woman named Alice Pice called my name. Seems that that paper I signed was a list to testify. I was called upon. There was a big clock that said I had 3 minutes, and I didn't have a clue. But I did speak from my heart about all of the harm that I was witnessing. And by the end of the meeting, I realized what a scam it was. And from there, I learned of a woman named Barbara Mataloni who was refusing to send out tapes for student teachers in Amherst and was taking on a company named Pearson. And then the next thing you know, Bob is now the president. And as Beth said, that's when we learned about Citizens for Public School. And I was blessed to meet Lisa and Alan and Pat, Julie, and Monty. And we met. And then this little girl from Hull actually began traveling into Boston. And Lisa, like when we were meeting up State Street, I mean, I was going beyond my comfort zone because I just didn't do stuff like that. And but it was so important that we did. And I remember meeting Jessica Tang and Jess, you know, doing the work at Orchard Hill with the Boston students. And a memory that night when we won question 2, that all I kept hearing was the student leader. We were in Chinatown for they were getting ready to do some big action at City Hall. But we were talking about the testing and teachers were talking about how they were afraid to speak out because of the evaluation process. And he turned to us and he said, "No disrespect, miss, but if teachers don't stand up for us, who will?"
Mhm.
And all these years later, I can still hear that because I was like, whoa. And then, you know, I was blessed to meet this social activist group, Measure. And I remember Ruth Rodriguez Fay and the work that she was doing on the North Shore and going to Worcester. And then seeing this TED Talk by some educator named Dr. Ricardo Rosa. And again, when we think of those defining moments, and, you know, Ricardo had this statement that as a true racial justice advocate, your actions have to speak louder than your words. And that stayed with me all the time. And, you know, and then we were lucky enough after Barbara that Mary got elected with Max. And we started to really get engaged with this work with the NEA and the 6 pillars of assessment, and got to meet folks at the national level doing this work. And then it all comes home to being blessed to work with Max and run as Max and Deb on a platform that was committed to eliminating the high stakes of this testing regime that had been going on for far too long. And so while it is an honor to hear the really kind words about me, and I can't wait to call my mother on the ride home and say, just like I did, Julie, the first night I chaired that government relations meeting, and I called my mother and I said, "You will never believe what I just did," because I didn't. And I'm going to share with her the kind words, but I want each of you to know in front of me that the pleasure has been all mine. And I just want to, I think it's really important that I do mention, you know, Shelley, when I hear you talk about your son, and Lisa, when you've talked and whatever, and this was always really a fight about my sister also, because I come from a family of dyslexic learners. I like to refer to it as that invisible ability to exceed far beyond a bubble. And it was one of the most powerful parts of this campaign because all along the campaign trail, more and more people were stepping forward and speaking their truths about how they were not a good tester and sharing what the struggles were like. And it had been this deep, dark secret. And when that firefighter from Quincy came forward to so publicly tell his story about being a dyslexic learner and how he was so challenged because of the high stakes of a test score, that's when I knew that we were going to win. And I also knew that like 2 weeks before, I went out and bought myself my own set of pearls because I knew we were going to win. So I just want to thank you for this honor, and I can't wait to see what we do down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Appreciate you. It's been great knowing you and working with you all these years. And I think what you and Beth and Shelley all have in common is this deep understanding of an appreciation for the whole child and the need to educate the whole child and to not just think of students as numbers, but they're full people, and we have to acknowledge all those aspects of them. So we're actually not done with you,
Oh.
but we're going to come back to you in a minute because we want to talk about what's next after question 2. But I just want to give Jessica a couple of minutes to say a few words. So here's Jessica.
Thanks, Lisa. So, just want to congratulate Beth, Shelley, and Deb. If you're wondering what makes our education justice movement strong in Massachusetts and wondering what the state of our movement is, I think that we just took a little walk down history lane, and all 3 of them have just shared such inspirational personal stories about why they're activists, why they care, why they do this work. And we all stand on, the legacy of so many of the giants who are already a part of the CPS community. I mean, I could name everyone actually, that's on its call really has laid that foundation of the educational justice movement that we keep, moving forward with. And Deb, Shelley, and Beth have just been tremendous leaders in continuing that fight and that legacy. And so just want to congratulate them and thank them for inspiring me too, and all of us. And thanks, Lisa, for the opportunity just to shout out our 3 fierce women honorees tonight.
Thank you, Jessica. Well said as always. And I'm so glad you could be here to share your thoughts with us. Now I'm going to go on to Dan French's portion of the agenda.
Well, I finally got power back after well over 2 hours. So, Deb, we wanted to sort of engage you in a little discussion about the post the tremendous victory around question 2. We've certainly, I'm sure everybody has seen that there's lots of hand-wringing going on amongst conservative folks that Massachusetts is going to sink to the depths in terms of our achievement. We're going to lose our #1 status on NAEP. That all hell is going to break loose in public education. And we're already seeing efforts both within the legislation and also the folks on the outside calling for other means of having a single mandated assessment to be attached to high school graduation. So we know that we won a tremendous victory, and we want to ensure that we preserve that victory and the notion that we finally have the opportunity to move towards the type of education that we all believe in, where kids are engaged in real world learning, where they demonstrate what they know and are able to do in real world ways, in multiple ways that they're going to encounter in the world once they graduate, that really also embrace beyond the finite academic skills content that is within the curriculum frameworks of the state, that the skills around problem solving, creativity, collaboration, reasoning, analysis, etc. So my question to you is just what's the MTA's thinking right now? And Jessica, you may have some thoughts too in terms of the AFT mass thinking. What's the current thinking about how to ensure that we keep moving in the direction of robust, project-based exploratory learning that we all believe in and thwart some of the conservative forces that are already mobilizing to ensure that we don't go down that path.
Great question. Today we had the opportunity, Jess, you were at that meeting with Commissioner Johnson. There was a group of stakeholders discussing some of the guidelines coming out from DESE next week. We have been hearing rumblings that there may be an attempt by some locals to, and they, according to DESE's interpretation of the new ballot law, that locals would have the right to say that it's the MCAS that would be the requirement at the local level. There must be some conversation of what taken place in certain arenas, because one of the follow-up questions was, can the local readjust the cutoff scores? And they were told, DESE will be telling them yes, that would be something that the local would be able to do. There was even like some conversation around, would DESE still score the MCAS? And would they give retests? So it's clear that there are conversations taking place somewhere. And I did share with them that, you know, we have a new business item before us this weekend by some members who would not have been the ones that we would have identified as being the progressive opt-out movement board members, but we do have a new business item coming before us about leading an opt-out movement. And I think what we will probably see emerge from this meeting is that there will be an amendment to the NBI that says the minute a district attempts to bring that forward, we will organize a district around an opt-out. It's not where we want to go, and that was not our focus, but I think we just need to be ready to be proactive and protecting the victory and making it clear that, you know, the voters spoke, and they spoke quite eloquently that the MCAS is not to be used for a high stakes measurement. So I just wanted to put that out there. Those conversations are taking place. With Jason today, we talked about a commission and the importance of this being a moment in time to stop, to not like replicate the system really quickly, but to really involve all of the stakeholders, to have these listening tours, and to bring in, we were talking about an expanded bargaining type of model around this legislation. And so I hope that answers what you were asking. Okay.
Yeah. And before I open it up, Jessica, do you want to say a few words of what the AFT Mass has been thinking post Q2?
Sure. One thing that we have definitely still been thinking about is that we still need to stop the use of high stakes testing to put districts in receivership. And we're still trying to get, you know, Lawrence out of receivership. And we're having a big fight right now with the Lawrence elected leaders, minus one representative, trying to actually take away the elected school committee under the guise of saying that it's a prerequisite for coming out of receivership, which we have since verified multiple times is not true. And so the harm of high stakes tests still being used to put districts in receivership, and then also districts falling into the bottom 10%, which is based on the MCAS scores, allowing then like Kip Lynn to try to expand their seats. Or in Salem, there's a charter school, and I know that there's one in the MTA district where they're trying to expand a charter school too, and they're able to do that because the MCAS scores are still being used to rank the districts. And now that they've fallen into the bottom 10%, they can, expand the charter seats. And so, I think we won one battle that's part of the war. But there's still work to be done in terms of how the tests are still used for ranking districts and put it into the high stakes punishment of receivership and then charter expansions. So that still needs to be addressed legislatively. And my worry too is that because those measures still exist, it still puts a tremendous amount of pressure on teachers to teach to the test, and then pressure on the students to, to take this test way too much seriously than it should be taken. So those are some thoughts. And then trying to figure out, well, again, how do we ensure that and I think we can tie it also to, we're trying to protect the conversation today that Deb mentioned with the other folks this morning was also about how do we protect our racial equity work, whether that's around, sorry, Rep. Eiderhoven is calling me 1 second. I will call her back. Sorry, we're trying to handle the issue in the State House. What was I saying? Oh, we were talking about the racial equity work and how do we protect that, especially under this new administration, whether it's the educator diversity work, whether it's culturally and linguistically sustaining practices and anti-racist pedagogy. And I do think that there is a connection too between that and the roboticization of teaching, where if it's all about standardization and specific tests and then teachers being expected to use specific curriculum, et cetera, then that actually takes away the joy of teaching and also being responsive to our students in a culturally and linguistically competent way too. And so I do think we need to help connect those two pieces, that the standardization, the high stakes testing, robotization is not a word, but it's something that one of our field reps use.
I think we all understand it.
Yeah, it is harmful to those other goals of around centered on racial equity. So, yeah, and then also, how do we make sure that we have the supports? We don't talk enough about the inputs and the resources and supports. People just want to talk about the high standards, which we should have, and that is a legitimate concern we did have, particularly, I think, for our low-income and background students. But you can't have that conversation without the resources and support.
Yeah. Joy of teaching plus adequate resources. So now's the time we're going to open it up for people's thoughts about what you've just heard from Deb and Jessica. Any thoughts you have, any questions? And we'll start it off that Deb, Peggy Weisenberg put in the chat. What do you mean by expanded bargaining?
Great question. So when educators are at the bargaining table, traditional model is you have your contract team, your bargaining team, and we have changed things up where we have what's called expanded bargaining for the common good, where we invite the members to the table to watch the process. And we are using this term when it comes to the legislative process, in that, this isn't a time for just the leaders in the MTA to go in and have conversations with the elected leaderships around legislation, but this is a time to invite community members, parents, stakeholders, the folks responsible for the win, to the conversations and to the table. And so that's the model of the term we use.
Great. But other thoughts, people who have reactions to what both Jessica and Deb discussed about post question 2 and what does the future hold? And okay, Karen, go ahead.
Has anybody pointed out to the to DESE and the legislators that during the Massachusetts ed reform, there was never meant to be one high stakes testing, that it was supposed to be, a different,
Comprehensive.
right. It was supposed to be comprehensive. It was supposed to be not just any one test. It was supposed to be different measures over. So, I mean, so I was just recently at the Mass Association of School Committees conference, and I spoke with Russell myself, and we pointed out to him that that was part of the Mass Ed reform laws, and he seemed surprised by that. And I was like, how do you not know that? I'm like, this was never to be one high stakes testing for our students. And as chair of the school committee, I don't want my students, tested to death, and I don't want my teachers standardizing their education for our students. I want my students, as the parent of like Shelley, students with ADHD and anxiety and everything else, I want them to be able to learn the way they learn. So, how do we move forward and make sure that they don't just bring us back to yet another, way of doing this? Because I'm going to make sure I'm going to do everything in my power as a school committee member that we're not going back there. So what can we do, not just as parents, but also as in my power as a school committee member? What can my team colleagues do to help push Russell and others to not make this mistake again?
Yeah, because they really are, some of the elite power brokers do believe that they need to recreate another standard. We use language around portraits of a graduate and alternative pathways to provide portraits of a graduate, acknowledging the 21st century skills, acknowledging AI, acknowledging that this is the time for a skills-based conversation. We definitely bring up, I love how Ricardo is bringing forward this full service community schools model. And so the more that we coalesce around our collective demand for the schools we want, the more they are going to have to listen. Yeah.
Oh,
So is there a way that we, as I guess my main question is, where do we go from here? I know I'm kind of cutting in, I'm sorry. So what are our next steps? Like, how do we coalesce?
I think what I hear is
in Winchendon and in the east, the north central, the most north central region of, the cold region, the snowy region, do to help you do this now? Because I can make phone calls and everything. I'll drive down to Boston. I don't care. But, how do we bring others on board now?
So I'm just going to quickly respond that I think we need to pay attention to the December 18th DESI meeting. We need to be asking locals. We need to be organizing at the local level to see what districts are going to do when they create the local competency determination, right? We clearly will be in contact around legislation that's going to be forthcoming. It's December 17th. Okay, my bad. I don't know why. I thought he said in a slide today, 18th. But all right. Jess, I don't know if you want to add something.
Sorry, I was trying to respond I missed the last part of the conversation. I was trying to respond to the message. The Lawrence situation is very time sensitive because it could happen any day in an informal session. Sorry about that.
No, just how folks can get engaged in the next steps, work around receivership.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we need to get behind legislation, but also, continue building the coalitions with community, family, and parents to fight back because ultimately that's where the fight is. Um, and yeah, so it's grassroots organizing, legislation, um, continued building, um, building power.
And Karen, just in answer to your question in the chat, you can only testify if you do it in person at board meetings. Okay, let's move on. Julie, go ahead.
I think Edith might have been before Julie.
So I'm sorry, Miss Edith, and then Julie.
That's okay, no worries. So,
I like having a friend of the chair, a friend of the facilitator. Go ahead, Edith.
it's good to see everyone. And of course, one of the things that piqued my interest in talking is when Jessica talked about racial equity, teacher diversity, and CLSP issues. We all know that we are in a difficult era. So that's the elephant that's in this conversation. DEI is under attack. Black history will be banned. And affirmative action has already died. For Black students in particular, while assessments have been removed as a requirement for graduation, I just want to bring to light what Chimamanda Adichie calls the danger of a single story. And the single story has not to do with just those three elements mentioned by Jessica, but thank you for bringing that up, but also racist policies that control funding, contracts, and curriculum, including school assignment algorithms that force Black students into rundown, underperforming, underfunded, chronically underperforming schools. And notice I did not say opportunity or achievement gap. I'm talking about the denial of racial equity, restorative justice, and high quality instruction. In Boston in particular, $474 million was used in ESSER funds, and we saw Black literacy gaps widen. This happened before MCAS, it happened during MCAS, and it will continue to happen. Why? Because number one, Black leaders are pushed out who have done the racial equity work in Boston public schools in particular. So now the district does not have to have the conversation about the harm that is done to Black students in our schools, where they have been pushed from grade to grade without developing basic skills while being criminalized in the school to prison pipeline. That is my interest, because that is taxation without representation. And so when we look at what is happening to Black families, I understand that, we all want to focus on the expansion of charter schools. Black families flee public education at the highest level than any other groups. And we have to look at the reasons why, which is really, really important. In our city, the mayor said, and I'll quote her, that she sees the system structured and led by anti-racist policies that undermine structural inequities rather than perpetuate them. That vision rings hollow for Black students, families, and educators. And this, for me, makes the passage of question 2 a Pyrrhic victory, because we are standing in the throes of underachievement. Historically, no matter what's been done, Ed Reform 1993 did nothing. MCAS did not change that. Nothing has changed that. And if we don't have a conversation about race and racism and allow Black people to lead that conversation, because we're the ones who are at the bottom, nothing is going to change. Money's not going to fix it. New schools is not going to fix it. Closing, consolidating schools are going to exacerbate it. And so I have to say that, because I'm not excited, because I know that things have not substantially changed, and we have not had a conversation about racism, anti-Blackness in particular, and that is what we need to address if we are going to seek a system that is rooted in racial equity. The system needs to be dismantled and restructured, and I'm not hearing that. And so I'm not excited, I'm not happy, and I don't feel that I am in a mood for celebration, particularly as we go into this very horrible, horrifying, paralyzing, and shockingly devastating era of what we saw back in 2016 with number 47. And you all know what I'm talking about. So I think unless we have a conversation about that, there is no victory.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Deb and Jessica, any comments?
I actually support what she says.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. The
So,
system is still there, and the system has to be transformed significantly. And so, yeah, I agree.
and hopefully CPS makes that one of the focuses of our work going forward in the coming year. I think we have time for one more. Julie, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, thanks. And yes, we do not need to work on those issues, Edith. And I think also looking at what's happening and how they're making changes to whatever the graduation requirement is decided upon, we need to have the issues of how that affects all students of color. But I was particularly thinking about the fact that how CPS can be a little different and maybe respond to Karen's question. And I think that Karen, being involved with the Massachusetts School Committees Association, could be very helpful. We also often have superintendents who serve on this board, and we're going to be hopefully adding a superintendent to our board this evening. And I think that that's very important that teachers and unions work with. We know the School Committee Association was very supportive of question 2. Now, the superintendents were not, although many were, but their executive board came out. And what they said about it, I think they have a lot of concerns about what's next. And I actually think, certainly with the School Committee Association and the superintendents, I think we can make common ground on this. And I think we better, because superintendents have a lot of power in the legislature. And school committees do or can have as well. So if we could come and have, and I think we could be on the same page with that. And Deb and Jessica and other folks have to see if that's true. But I think it probably better be true because I think otherwise they can be people who could, I know they won't necessarily want to go back to the test, but who knows? So I would just recommend that we start talking to the school committees and superintendents.
Great. Okay, there is much more discussion that could be had, and including along Edith's comments around racial equity. And we have about 15 minutes left. So we're going to have to close off this conversation, and I'm going to turn it back to Lisa.
Yeah, so this has all been really important discussion and not enough time to do it justice, but we're going to keep having it going forward as an organization. Because it is 8:15, we are a little behind in the schedule. I think I'm going to make an executive decision, because I'm the executive director, and have some of the reports not be presented now, but you will receive the reports in your inboxes. But I think we should move on to Julie leading us through the nominating committee section of the program.
Okay. Great, thank you. Let's see. Go to the program, because that will have the recommendation of the nominating committee for our board and officers and a couple of new board members. So if you could go into that, you find it in the chat somewhere, and if you could open up the program, that will be helpful.
So I just pasted it in the chat once again.
Okay, so let's all open that up. And first you might want to, I'm going to do it. Do you want me to do the elections all together, Lisa?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to look at, why don't we look at first, go to page 4 and 5. And those are the bios of 2 people who were, the nominating committee is recommending that we vote to add these folks to our board of directors. So you will see those folks and read their bios, or just glance at their bios so you can see who they are. There's nice pictures in there too. So, and I think Aradhana
is here tonight.
Aradhana, I'm sorry. She's here, and
I'm
also, but Dr. Alvarez is not with us tonight, but she is she wants to join our board as well. She's the superintendent of the Lynn Public Schools. So if folks can turn to that and just take a look. And perhaps Dr. Mudambi would you like to say something?
Sure. So I'm really excited. I got to know more about the organization when I was invited to talk about multilingual education, and I really like the work that y'all are doing. And I really am passionate about what Edith was talking about, the racial equity that is sorely lacking in our system right now, as students are basically being segregated into, we can see it through the achievement of the schools, right? Students are being segregated as to what their instruction looks like and what access that they have. And so I'm excited the prospect of joining y'all and fighting this fight.
Great, thank you. So if you got a chance to look at the bios for Dr. Mudambi and also for Dr. Alvarez, then you can go on to see on page, I think it's page 7. It's the nominating committee report. So what we do is our board members have 3-year terms. So the folks that were up this year have all agreed to, they would like to stay on the board. And so you'll see we have Jennifer Debin, who's on the call tonight, myself, Julie Johnson, Lou Kruger, who I believe is here, Karen Cass-McBride, Deb McCarthy, who you heard from, Kevin Murray, who I don't know is on tonight, Max Page, who was here briefly, Go Sasaki, and Norma Shapiro. So our recommendation is to re-elect those folks for another 3-year term. And then the proposed new members, Dr. Alvarez and Dr. Mudambi. And then our officers, which our president, Dan French, has agreed to serve another year. Our officers are yearly. Thank you, Dan. We have a vacancy in the vice president category. And if anyone is interested in doing that, please let us know. And the treasurer secretary is Andrew King, who I know I saw tonight. So that is the recommendation of the nominating committee. And so I will take a motion.
I have a question, Julie.
Oh, sure.
Did you speak with Kevin Murray to see if he wants to serve? He no longer works for Mass Advocates for Children, where he did work then, and he no longer comes to Quest meetings. So I don't know if
yeah, I did speak with Kevin, and he expressed an interest in remaining on.
Great.
But we actually, one person is stepping down whose term is up, and that's Carolyn Silva Sanchez.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we don't have her on that list. She's stepping down.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. All right. So a motion? Anyone would like to make a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Norma. Okay. Norma and Beth. So now we'd like to, all those in favor of the recommendation of the nominating committee? Say aye or raise your hand or.
Aye.
And okay, and all those opposed? Take your hands down. Okay. All right. So voted our new board members and old board members and our officers. Thank you very much.
None of us are old board members. So.
Back to you, Lisa.
Okay. All right. Back to me. So some of the things that we didn't have time to get to, my executive director's report, the proposed budget for 2025, the financial update, and the minutes from the last meeting will all be shared via email and will be available to answer any questions that people have or have conversations about any of that with you. And I just want to thank you all for your participation, your work. As Beth and Deb and Shelley mentioned, this was all collective efforts. And as Edith said, there's a lot more work to do, but we just keep doing the work together and, listening to each other and learning from each other. And, there's some dark times ahead, but we have each other.
Lisa, before you close us out, can I do a quick pitch for committee work?
Yes.
So just note that CPS is a very lean organization. We have one paid staff person who does women's work. That's Lisa. And the rest of us are volunteers. So that means that a lot of our work is volunteer work, and we do hope and expect all our board members to be involved in committee work. And we also have members who are also involved in committee work. So all to say, our engine really comes out of our committee work. So right now we have two committees. One is the Testing Policy Committee, which, as you saw, there's lots of work to be done in this next chapter of ensuring that we stay on the path of moving towards much more meaningful, joyful learning. And there's going to be a lot of work to do with MTA, AFTMA. So we certainly want to recruit more people onto that committee. The second one is our Eliminating Barriers Committee. We hope to have a victory sometime in the coming near months around. We've been battling for umpteen years with the State Board of Education and to enable equitable opportunity, access and opportunity for students of color, English learners, low-income students, and students with disabilities into our state's vocational schools, which currently rank order select students using bias-based grades, discipline, attendance, and guidance counselor recommendations. So we also work with, we're conducting a current multilingual learner webinar, which and are also involved in the Juvenile Justice Coalition. We should also be taking up the racial equity inequities. And a third committee that we should be forming is around equitable funding and the whole issue of increasing funding to adjust for the huge inflation that has undergone since the pandemic. So we really encourage everybody to join a committee if you're not already involved, because it's your ideas and your labor that really pushes our work forward. So back to you, Lisa.
Okay, so thanks again and congratulations to our 3 honorees. Welcome to our new board member. Thank you all for all of your excellent work. It's been a pleasure and honor to work with all of you, and hope you all have a good rest of your evening. You all know where to find me if you have anything to say or ask or want to volunteer for a working group. Have a good evening, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Onwards.